You are tuned into Justice Insight Cam. Here, we examine genuine law enforcement encounters through actual bodycam footage. Rather than just watching, we investigate the underlying truths, legal principles, and key lessons of every stop. Let's pursue justice together.
Sir, step away from that vehicle and put your hands where I can see them.
Sorry, what exactly is the problem here?
We got a call. Someone matching your description was trying to break into cars. Hands now.
Sir, I own this dealership account. I have an appointment, and I would strongly advise you to think very carefully about.
Is that a threat?
At 2:17 p.m. on a Tuesday in September, in the parking lot of Meridian Luxury Motors on Westfield Boulevard in Columbus, Ohio, what should have been a routine dealership visit lasting 45 minutes became one of the most thoroughly documented civil rights confrontations ever captured on camera in the state of Ohio. 11 security cameras were recording everything, inside, outside, on parking lot poles, across the showroom floor, with every angle covered, every frame time-stamped, and every word preserved. This was not some blurry cell phone video filmed from 30 yards away. It was 43 minutes of crystal-clear, multi-angle footage that left absolutely nothing open to interpretation, nothing to dispute, and nothing to explain away. Because the man standing in that parking lot with officers ordering his hands up was the Honorable Raymond J. Carter, a United States federal judge appointed to the Southern District of Ohio, confirmed by the United States Senate, a man who had spent 26 years inside the American legal system, a man with the authority to send people to federal prison, a man who, on that Tuesday afternoon, was simply there to test drive a car. What happened next would stun the Columbus Police Department, ignite a national firestorm, and prove that in America, no title, no achievement, and no amount of success makes a black man immune to being treated like a suspect in broad daylight. Drop a comment and let me know where you are watching from. And if you have not subscribed yet, please do that right now, because this story gets significantly more intense from here. Raymond Jerome Carter was not your average 44-year-old. While most people his age were focused on mortgages and weekend plans, Raymond Carter had spent 2 decades reshaping the legal landscape of the American Midwest. He grew up in the Linen neighborhood of Columbus, the son of a postal worker and a public school teacher. He was the first in his family to attend college, earning a full scholarship to Ohio State University, where he graduated summa cum laude. He then attended Harvard Law School, graduating in the top 5% of his class. After law school, he spent 8 years as a civil rights attorney, taking on housing discrimination, police brutality, and wrongful termination cases. He became a county court judge at 34, one of the youngest in Ohio history. 5 years later, he was nominated to the federal bench by the President of the United States. His Senate confirmation was described as one of the smoothest in recent memory. By that September afternoon, Judge Carter had presided over more than 2,000 federal cases. He had written opinions cited by courts across the country. He was wearing a light gray blazer, carrying his phone, and had a confirmed 2 o'clock appointment with his longtime sales associate, David Okafor. He had purchased 4 vehicles from this dealership over 11 years. He had every reason in the world to feel comfortable walking across that parking lot. He did not get to feel comfortable for very long. On the afternoon of September 14th, Judge Carter left the federal courthouse downtown at 1:45 p.m. He had cleared his afternoon calendar specifically for this appointment. And David Okafor had called the previous week to say the new model Carter had been considering had just arrived on the lot. The drive took 25 minutes. He parked in the client area and near the front entrance, exactly where he had parked a dozen times before. The day was clear. The lot was busy but calm. Other customers were walking the lot. Sales associates were visible through the showroom windows. Judge Carter stepped out of his car and walked toward the showroom entrance. He paused near a dark blue SUV the exact model he had come to see, to look at the exterior color in natural light. He was standing 3 feet away. He had not touched it. He was simply a man in business attire, standing in a car dealership parking lot, looking at a car he intended to buy. That was the entirety of the situation. Then a Columbus police cruiser rolled slowly into the lot. Then another one followed right behind it. Judge Carter noticed them. His expression visible on the parking lot camera did not show panic. It showed something quieter and more practiced. The kind of recognition that too many black men in America develop over a lifetime of moments exactly like this one. His hands came slowly out of his pockets. He stood still. He waited. Officer Derek Briggs stepped out of the first cruiser before it had fully stopped. Officer Derek Briggs had been with the Columbus Police Department for 7 years. 31 years old, assigned to the Westfield District. 2 commendations for response time. 1 formal complaint for excessive force resolved internally. By department standards, an average officer. This was routine for him, or so he thought. His partner, Officer Stacy Mullen, exited the second cruiser and positioned herself about 15 feet to the left. Standard 2 officer approach to what they had apparently been told was a breaking and entering complaint. Briggs walked directly toward Judge Carter with the energy of someone who had already made a decision before asking a single question. "Sir, I need you to step away from that vehicle and put your hands where I can see them. I'm sorry. What exactly is the problem here? We received a call that someone matching your description was attempting to break into vehicles on this lot. Step back and keep your hands visible." Now here is where most people would start apologizing, explaining, fumbling for their phone, maybe raising their voice out of frustration. As Judge Carter did none of that because he understood with the precision of someone who had spent 26 years inside the legal system exactly what was happening and exactly what his rights were in that moment. "I have an appointment at this dealership," he said evenly. "I'm a client here. My sales associate, David Okafor, is inside that showroom waiting for me right now. I have the appointment confirmation on my phone. I'll need to verify that. But right now, I need you to step away from the vehicle. I am standing 3 feet from the vehicle, and I have not touched it. I am happy to remain here while you verify my appointment. I am not required to move simply because you have asked me to." Briggs stiffened. In 7 years on patrol, when an unformed officer with a hand near his belt told someone to step back, that person stepped back immediately without question. The implicit weight of the uniform and the badge was usually enough to produce instant compliance. Whether or not the request was actually lawful, Judge Carter was not most people. "Sir, this is not a negotiation. Can I see some identification?" And here is where this becomes legally significant. In Ohio, a person is not required to produce identification simply because an officer asks for it. Ohio is not a stop and identify state. An officer can request ID, but a citizen is not legally obligated to produce it unless they have been lawfully detained. And a lawful detention requires reasonable, articulable suspicion that the person has committed or is committing a crime. A vague phone call about someone looking at cars did not meet that threshold. Judge Carter knew it down to the exact statute. "Am I being detained?" he asked. Briggs blinked. "Excuse me, it is a straightforward question. Am I being detained? Because if I am, I would like to know the specific legal basis. And if I am not being detained, then I am free to go inside and meet my appointment." Quick question for everyone watching right now. Have you ever asked a police officer if you were being detained and actually received a straight answer? Drop a comment below, because what happens next is something most people never get to see. Briggs looked at his partner. Mullen gave him nothing back, just a neutral expression. "You are being detained for investigation, pending verification of your reason for being on this property," Briggs said. And with those words, Officer Derek Briggs made the single most consequential decision of his 7-year law enforcement career. He had just formally detained a sitting United States federal judge without reasonable articulable suspicion in a public commercial parking lot in front of 11 security cameras for the apparent crime of standing near a car he was there to buy. Judge Carter's expression did not change. His voice did not change, but something shifted in his eyes. Those who have watched this footage know exactly what that shift looks like. It is not anger, it is not fear. It is the quiet, absolute certainty of a person who knows they are right, can prove it, and that the clock has just started on the other person's consequences. "Very well," Judge Carter said. "I want to note for whatever recording device is capturing this interaction, which I believe includes your body camera and the security system of this establishment, that I am complying under protest, and solely to avoid escalation while preserving my full legal rights. I do not consent to this detention. I do not believe it is lawful, and I will be pursuing all available remedies." Briggs stared at him. "Are you a lawyer or something?" Judge Carter looked at him for a moment. Then he said quietly and without emphasis, "I am a federal judge." The silence that followed lasted for seconds. You can count them on the footage. 4 full seconds where Officer Derek Briggs stood completely still in that parking lot, processing what he had just heard, while 11 cameras recorded every frame. Then Briggs said in a tone that had shifted noticeably from authoritative to uncertain, "I'm going to need to verify that." "You are absolutely welcome to," Judge Carter said. "My name is Raymond Jerome Carter. I am a United States District Judge for the Southern District of Ohio. You may call dispatch, contact the federal courthouse, or simply walk into that showroom and ask for David Okafor, who has known me for 11 years. Mullen had already stepped away and was speaking quietly into her radio with her back turned. Her body language had completely changed. She was no longer positioned as backup. She was doing damage control. Briggs stood there another moment. Then he said something that would become when the footage went public. One of the most replayed 3 seconds in Columbus News media history. "Well, I still need to verify the situation before I can let you go." And Judge Carter said, "Officer, I want you to understand something clearly. You have formally detained a black man in business attire in a commercial parking lot with no reasonable basis beyond the apparent fact of my presence and my appearance, without making any attempt to verify my appointment before escalating without establishing any legal justification for detention. I want you to think about that very carefully while you verify the situation." Briggs said nothing. He was realizing it slowly. The way a person realizes something terrible like watching water rise and only beginning to understand it is not going to stop. He had flagged a black man in a blazer standing near an expensive car, called it suspicious, rolled up with 2 cruisers, formally detained him, and the man had not flinched, had not fumbled, had not raised his voice, and had just identified himself as a federal judge with the calm confidence of someone who had spent nearly 3 decades preparing for exactly this moment. Officer Derek Briggs had no idea what to do next. David Okafor came out of the showroom 2 minutes and 40 seconds after the detention was announced. He had seen the cruisers pull in through the showroom window, watched for a moment without fully understanding what he was seeing, then recognized Judge Carter standing with 2 officers flanking him and came outside immediately. "Judge Carter, what is going on? I have been waiting inside for you." He turned to Briggs. "This man is a client of ours. He has an appointment today. I have been his sales associate for 11 years. Is there a problem?" The dealership's general manager was now visible through the glass. He is watching the scene with a phone in his hand. Briggs said, "We received a call about a suspicious individual on the lot." Okafor looked at Judge Carter, then Briggs, then back again. Then he said quietly, The judge has purchased 4 vehicles from this dealership. He is here to test drive a new model, yet he had a 2 o'clock appointment confirmed by email this morning. The body camera captures Briggs in this moment with a clarity that is uncomfortable to watch. You can see the specific instant the full weight of what he has done lands on him. His jaw tightens. His eyes move from Okafor to Carter and back. His shoulders drop. If you have ever watched someone realize they have made an irreversible mistake in real time, that is what you are watching. Judge Carter continued, his voice never rising, never adding a single degree of heat to any word. Officer, let me summarize what has occurred. You received an unverified call. You arrived and observed a black man in business attire standing near, but not touching a vehicle. You made no attempt to ask why I was here before assuming I was the subject of the complaint. You demanded identification without establishing reasonable, articulable suspicion. When I asked whether I was being detained, you chose to formally detain me rather than simply verify my appointment, which would have taken 30 seconds, and is standing directly behind you. And now you are discovering that you detained a sitting federal judge on no legal basis in front of multiple recording devices, while I was doing nothing more than looking at a car I intended to purchase. That is the summary. That is what happened here today. Briggs opened his mouth, then closed it. His partner touched his arm briefly and said something too quietly for the cameras to capture, but her face said everything. Her face said, "We need to end this right now." "Sir, if your appointment checks out, you are free to go." Judge Carter looked at him for a long moment. "I am aware of that," he said. "I have been free to go this entire time. The difference is that now you are aware of it too." He turned, thanked David Okafor, and walked into the showroom. 43 minutes. 43 minutes that would alter the trajectory of Officer Derek Briggs's career, his reputation, and his life in ways that had not yet fully begun to reveal themselves. Most people who experience what Judge Carter experienced that afternoon go home, vent to a friend, maybe post something on social media, and absorb it as one more entry in a long, near-exhausting catalog of indignities, because the system has taught them through years of demonstrated outcomes that speaking up costs more than staying quiet. Judge Raymond Carter was not most people. That evening at 8:43 p.m., Judge Carter submitted a formal written complaint to the Columbus Police Department's Office of Internal Affairs. But calling it a complaint dramatically undersells what it actually was. It was a 17-page legal document, single-spaced, fully cited. It referenced specific Ohio statutes, 4th and 14th Amendment case law, and the department's own published guidelines on investigative stops. It named both officers by badge number. It provided a time-stamped camera-by-camera account of every moment of the encounter. It detailed the legal deficiencies in the stop, the absence of reasonable, articulable suspicion, and the procedural errors in the detention. It was the kind of document a senior civil rights attorney would spend 2 weeks preparing. Judge Carter wrote it in an evening because he had spent his career writing exactly this kind of document. The Columbus Police Department received the complaint the following morning. By noon that same day, Officer Briggs had been placed on administrative leave. That was not normal. Typically, these complaints sit in a processing queue for weeks before any action is taken. But the complaint was so legally precise and so comprehensively supported by evidence that the department's legal team apparently advised immediate action. The dealership cooperated fully. All 11 camera feeds were preserved and provided to investigators within 24 hours. David Okafor provided a written statement. The general manager confirmed Carter's client history. The email appointment confirmation was submitted. Every single element of Judge Carter's account was independently corroborated before the investigation had been open 48 hours. Do you think the department moved fast enough? Let me know in the comments. Let investigator Lieutenant Sandra Reyes pulled the body camera footage the morning it was submitted. She watched it once, then again. Then she called in her deputy and watched it a third time. Then she called the department's chief legal counsel. The footage confirmed everything, every single point in the complaint. But Lieutenant Reyes found something else. The parking lot perimeter camera mounted on the far pole had a wider angle than the others. And in that wider angle, visible in the background of the entire 43-minute encounter, you could see another customer on the lot, a white man in jeans and a t-shirt who spent 11 minutes leaning against vehicles, peering through windows, and pressing his face to the glass of a truck. No officers approached him. No one called it in. He was on the lot the entire time Briggs had Judge Carter detained. Nobody questioned him. Nobody demanded his hands be visible. That single wide-angle shot transformed an already serious internal affairs case into something the department could not manage quietly. The investigation took 11 days. For context, the average internal affairs investigation in Columbus took between 60 and 90 days to reach conclusion. 11 days was not just fast, it was unprecedented. But the evidence spoke in one voice from every angle, and there was nothing to deliberate over. The department's official findings determine the following. First, Officer Briggs failed to establish reasonable articulable suspicion prior to demanding identification. Second, the formal detention was without lawful basis and constituted an unlawful stop under both Ohio law and Fourth Amendment precedent. Third, the 43-minute duration was grossly disproportionate to any legitimate investigative purpose. Fourth, the perimeter camera footage revealed what the department described in carefully chosen legal language as racially disparate application of investigative procedures. The department recommended termination. Officer Derek Briggs resigned the morning the findings were released. His 7-year career ended because he stopped a man in a blazer from walking into a car dealership. Officer Mullen received a formal written reprimand and was required to complete 32 hours of additional civil rights and bias training. The department also announced a mandatory implicit bias retraining program for all patrol officers in the Westfield district. The department initially tried to keep the footage from public release. It took a records request filed jointly by 3 local news organizations and a civil rights advocacy group to force its release 2 weeks after the investigation concluded. When it hit the internet, it did not trickle. It exploded. Within 48 hours, the primary clip had been viewed more than 22 million times. Every major national outlet covered it. Legal analysts broke it down on cable news. Law school professors used it in constitutional law classes as a case study in unlawful stops. The 4-second silence after Judge Carter identified himself became one of the most shared video clips of that month. Some people praised Carter for his composure and precision. Others raised the uncomfortable point that he only received accountability because of his title and resources, and asked what would have happened to a black man without a federal judgeship and a 17-page legal document. That criticism was valid, and Judge Carter himself made that point in subsequent interviews, emphasizing that the focus should be on systemic reform rather than the exceptional circumstances of his individual case. After the footage went viral, other individuals came forward with accounts of similar experiences involving Officer Briggs in the preceding 18 months. A black architect detained outside a downtown office building. A black physician questioned at length in a hospital parking garage. A black college professor followed through a shopping center and stopped near his own vehicle. None of them had filed formal complaints at the time. Most said they had not filed because they did not believe anything would happen. This raises a question without a comfortable answer. How many stops like this happen every week in cities across this country? where the person being detained does not have a federal judgeship, does not have 26 years of constitutional law expertise, and does not have the capacity to write a 17-page brief before going to sleep. How many of those moments get absorbed and forgotten because the person being stopped has been trained by experience to believe that speaking up is more dangerous than staying silent? The Columbus Police Department made several changes after this incident. Officers received updated training on investigative stop thresholds and documentation requirements. A fast-track review protocol was implemented for complaints supported by video evidence. New guidance was issued on the distinction between a consensual encounter and a formal detention, something that apparently needed clarification. Essentially, they made their officers take the kind of training that Judge Raymond Carter could have taught. Here is a question for everyone watching. If you were in Judge Carter's position, would you have handled it the same way? Be honest with yourself, because the answer reveals something important. Drop it in the comments. This story is not really about a car dealership. It is not about one officer in Columbus, Ohio. This story is about the gap between the rights Americans are told they have and the reality of what it costs to exercise those rights when you are black in this country. It is about the way authority, when unchecked by knowledge and accountability, defaults to the path of least resistance. And it is about the rare and genuinely powerful thing that happens when someone refuses to be smaller than the law requires them to be. Most people do not know the legal threshold for a lawful investigative stop. Most people do not know the difference between a consensual encounter and a formal detention. And some officers count on that lack of knowledge. They count on the weight of the uniform being enough. They count on the social pressure of the moment being enough. When you encounter someone like Judge Carter, someone who knows the statutes by number and has written the opinions and argued the appeals, the calculation changes completely. The badge does not automatically win. Knowledge becomes the equalizer. Let us address something that came up constantly in the comments. Some people said Carter was only able to get accountability because of his title, and that his story therefore does not represent a meaningful victory for ordinary people. There is truth in that. The resources he had, the legal knowledge, the institutional standing, the credibility that made investigators act immediately. Most people do not have those things. That is real and important, but every legal argument he made in that parking lot was available to any person standing there. The question of whether reasonable articulable suspicion existed is a question anyone can ask. The right to ask whether you are being detained belongs to everyone. The difference was not the rights themselves. The difference was the knowledge of those rights and what the system does with your complaint afterward. That is not an argument that nothing needs to change. It is an argument that two things need to change, not one. So here is what this story teaches us practically. First, know the difference between a consensual encounter and a lawful detention. An officer can approach and ask questions. That is consensual, and you are generally free to walk away. A detention requires reasonable, articulable suspicion of a specific crime. You have the right to ask clearly whether you are being detained. Second, your composure is your most powerful tool. Judge Carter never raised his voice, never became emotional. He never gave the encounter a character that could be used against him. His calm was not just admirable, it was strategic. Third, document everything you legally can. The cameras in that parking lot were not there to protect Judge Carter. They became the most consequential evidence in the case anyway. Fourth, formal complaints written with specificity and supported by evidence can move systems that seem immovable. Vagueness gets buried. Precision demands a response. Fifth, accountability in individual cases is not the same as systemic change. Officer Briggs losing his job was a consequence. It was not a solution. The conversation has to keep going beyond the outcome of any single case. One man, one parking lot, 43 minutes, and a 7-year career ended before the investigation was 2 weeks old. That is the power of knowledge. That is the importance of documentation. That is what happens when someone refuses to accept less than what the law actually guarantees them. Final question for everyone watching. What is one thing you learned from this story that you did not know before? Drop your answer in the comments. And if this story meant something to you, please share it, because the people who most need to see it are the ones who have already absorbed too many moments like this one in silence. This story matters because it is not just about Raymond Carter and Derek Briggs in a parking lot in Columbus. It is about every Black American who has ever been made to feel like a suspect in a space they had every right to occupy. It is about every person detained by the weight of an assumption rather than the evidence of a crime. It is about every moment that got absorbed quietly because speaking up felt too dangerous and too pointless and too exhausting. Judge Carter's story shows that you can know your rights and use them. You can refuse an unlawful order without raising your voice. You can hold the system to its own stated standards. And sometimes when the evidence is undeniable, the documentation is airtight, and the cameras were rolling on every angle, you can win. Not every story ends this way. Not every stop results in accountability. Not every complaint produces change, but this one did. And that matters because it happened, because it was documented, because it proved what too many people in this country already know from lived experience, and too many others still need to understand that a badge is not a blank check, that a uniform is not above the Constitution, and that knowledge, real knowledge, the kind you carry in your mind and can use in a parking lot at 2 in the afternoon without flinching, is the most powerful thing a person can walk into any encounter with. That is Judge Raymond Carter's legacy. Not just one officer's resignation, but the permanent, documented, undeniable record that it happened, that it was wrong, and that it did not go unanswered. Subscribe right now for more real stories about accountability, civil rights, and the moments when people refuse to accept what is not acceptable. Smash that like button if you believe that no badge and no assumption is stronger than the truth on camera. Share this video with everyone you know, because awareness is the first step toward the kind of change that actually sticks. And drop a comment. Tell me where you are watching from. Tell me if you have ever experienced something like this. Tell me the one thing you are taking away from this story today. This story is presented for educational and formational purposes only. The scenario depicted is entirely fictional and has been created to illustrate documented patterns of racially biased policing, civil rights law, and accountability processes. All names, characters, locations, and events are completely fictional. Any resemblance to actual persons living or dead, or to actual events, is entirely coincidental. Know your rights, stay safe.
Thank you for your time. Should this video have broadened your understanding, please support us by liking, sharing, and subscribing to Justice Insight Cam. Keep yourself informed, stay safe, and await our upcoming broadcast.